Welcome. Today we're going to be talking about stress and the impact that it has on our bodies. We're going to be exploring what it actually does to our bodies and brains and the difference between acute stress and chronic stress and what you can actually do to mitigate stress. So pretty important one for everyone. We can't avoid stress in our lives. Sometimes it's short-term stress. It might be an exam, or maybe um, somebody is ill, um, or it could be perhaps a little more of a long-term stress like financial difficulties, that kind of thing. So we all have stress in our lives, and it's important to understand what that does, how your body deals with that and your brain, and what we can do to best cope with the stress that we encounter. So let's get on. So, what actually is stress? So, stress is actually a physiological response. It's not an emotion. It does have a physical impact on you. So, here I've put an example of perhaps a fire. So, if you perceived a threat like a fire, your brain would interpret that and as something that is stressful, and it would then tell your body to run away from it. So this is the sort of fight, flight, freeze scenario. So that's actually what stress is. It's a mechanism for our that we've evolved over hundreds of thousands of years in order to remove ourselves from something that is stressful or to cope with something that is stressful. So it actually um, changes things within our body so that we can best cope with that stressful situation. So, what actually happens to our body during stress? So, when our brain is aware that there is a stress, it will basically it will release a chemical which signals to our adrenal glands to produce adrenaline and cortisol. So, adrenaline, something you've probably all heard of, which is something that you talk about helps the runners. Um, and people who are racing, those kind of things. And cortisol is the stress hormone. So it does a lot of things. So does the adrenaline. So once those have been produced, depending on what the stress, what this actual stress was, will produce physiological effects on the body. So, for example, the adrenaline and the cortisol will increase your blood pressure. It will make your heart rate faster. That's so that it can flood your system with and your brain with more oxygen, so it can better cope potentially with the stress. It will also actually suppress appetite and can cause your digestive system to actually shut down temporarily, and that's so that it's actually moving resources away from perhaps things that are not that important right now during that stressful time. So, for example, running, you don't need to be worrying about digesting your food when you're running away from a stress, from a fear, say. And also, it triggers your lungs to breathe more deeply and more rapidly. Um, um, well, actually, sometimes more shallowly and more rapidly. And it also affects your blood sugar levels as well. So it will actually increase. So there's your pancreas there. It will actually increase your insulin, and so that you get an increase in blood sugar, which will so it sort of floods your blood with glucose essentially, so that you have more fuel available to burn should you need to run away. So that's what happens actually during the stress. So there's a lot that actually happens. It isn't just your brain, your whole body reacts to stress because of these stress hormones that are produced, the adrenaline and the cortisol. So there's a lot going on. So what actually happens in the brain as well? So Um, while while the stress is going on, um, there are changes that happen within the brain. Um, So it depends on how long the stress goes on for, but the longer the stress goes on for, you'll actually see, certainly in the short term, you'll see some things like more alertness, sharper focus, things like that. But in the long term, it actually can shrink your hippocampus, which is an area of the brain that deals with memory. Um, and it can also overactivate the ab amygdala. I always can't say that. Which actually deals with your fear and anger part of it. This is this sort of fight, flight. And it can actually weaken the prefrontal cortex, which is where the decision making happens. So this is why people that have stress for a longer time actually really struggle making decisions. They suffer from sort of brain fog. They can't remember things. They find it difficult to plan. So stress actually longer term actually does change the structure of the brain. So very short term, sort of acute stress, which we'll come on to shortly, can actually help alertness. So, for example, just before an exam, you might get that sort of rush of adrenaline and cortisol, and actually helps you for a short time to be able to deal with that stress. But longer term, it actually can change the structure of the brain and actually change how you think as well. Good. So we've touched on this already. What is acute stress versus chronic stress? So acute stress is something that happens quickly and goes quickly. So it's a short-term stress. So for example, that might be you burn yourself. That's causes stress. You take your hand away from the burn. Or it could be you're going into an exam. That's a short-term stress. You come away. Long-term might be something like long-term financial difficulties or long-term illness of a family member. Perhaps you're having to care for someone long term. You could have a redundancy, and that's the kind of thing that can cause chronic stress. This is where you're waking up every day and you're feeling stressed, and you may not realize you're feeling stressed, but it's something that is long term actually triggering these stress hormones, so the adrenaline, the cortisol. So acute stress is something that our bodies are designed to deal with very well. Chronic stress, not so much. So there are issues if you have chronic stress, so long-term stress. So we're going to talk next about that. So what are some of the signs of becoming chronically stressed? So these are the things that you might notice yourself. So it could be that you are having headaches more frequently. So this is associated with the tension that you can get with the stress. You might find that you are more fatigued, you're lacking energy. You might find that you have more frequent colds and illnesses. You might find that your immune system seems to be more run down. You also might find it more difficult to fall asleep or stay asleep, so having insomnia or other sleep problems. You might find that you're eating a lot more comfort food than normal. So you're reaching for and craving for things like carbohydrates, junk food, crisps, those kind of things. So that is something which, if your blood sugar is being flooded with this glucose as part of the stress response, then you're going to be having sort of elevated blood sugar on a more regular basis, which is going to be harder for you to then manage those cravings. Also, you might find that you are reaching for other sort of coping mechanisms more usually, so more than usual. So it could be, for example, caffeine. You're consuming a lot more caffeine, or alcohol, the sort of things that might change your state to help you better cope with things. So these are the sort of things that you might notice and may not realize are actually signs of becoming chronically stressed. So, what are the other things that are actually happening that you may not be aware of when you are in this position of this long-term chronic stress? So these are the other things that are actually going on in your body that can happen as a result of this chronic stress. So one of them is irregular heartbeat. So because of this adrenaline there's too much adrenaline, basically it's constantly switched on. It can affect that. So you can have problems with regular heartbeat and also increase in blood pressure. You can find that you get a lot more tension in your body, and therefore things like back pain can be a lot more prevalent. It's very difficult when you're anxious and stressed to relax. You might find that you have developed things like irritable bowel syndrome, or you have acid reflux, or you have other gut health issues that you didn't have before. Now, this is extremely common and not well known that chronic stress actually can lead to a lot of gut health issues. Interestingly enough, chronic stress can actually increase cancer progression as well. So the the rate at which cancer reproduces in your system, or the more likelihood that it will develop, is also linked to chronic stress. And then lastly, infertility. So long-term chronic stress is linked to increased risk of infertility. So there's a lot of things there which are affecting your body negatively. So see, we've touched on that on the previous slide, but can stress really make you ill? And the answer is yes, it absolutely can. And a lot of times people are going to the doctors because they have, they're experiencing a lot of perhaps high blood pressure and heart irregularity, things like that. Actually realize that it's down to this chronic stress. So chronic stress equals chronic inflammation, because all these systems are switched on that should be routinely switched off, causes chronic inflammation. And chronic inflammation is linked to most of the diseases you find in your body, including cancer. So it actually can increase your risk of cancer as well. So stress has a physiological negative impact on your body, chronic stress. And it's something that we need to be aware of, how to spot it and how to mitigate it. So we'll come to that next. So ways to mitigate acute stress. So these are things in the moment you're feeling stressed. Something has just happened which has caused you to feel stress. The first thing is to obviously be aware that you are stressed. So take a moment to become aware of that. What's happened to your breathing? Are you feeling anxious? Are you suddenly feeling tense? Okay, so the first thing to do is be aware that you are in a stressful situation. Now, here's a few tools that you can do. So I've put the box there. So if you've seen some of our other videos, you'll see that's the box breathing technique. So it's the 4x4x4x4. So what you do there is, in that moment, you need to breathe in for 4 seconds, hold it for 4 seconds, breathe out for 4 seconds, and hold it out for 4 seconds before breathing in. And you do that 3 or 4 times. So we'll just do that once now so that you can see what that is. So you're going to breathe in for 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now hold it. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now breathe out. 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold it. 1, 2, 3, 4. And breathe in. 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on. 3 or 4 times. You concentrate on that, and that regulates your breathing, and that will help flood your brain with oxygen and help calm you down. So another thing you can do is stretching, moving your body around, stretching, and also shaking. So you've probably all seen dogs do this. When they get super excited, they will suddenly shake. It actually releases a lot of these the stress hormones from your body. It sort of works them out. All sort of movement does that. Walking is especially good for that. So getting up, having a brisk walk, especially if you can be in the fresh air Sunshine, back in nature is a really good way to reduce stress. So if you perhaps have a stressful moment at work, take yourself up, get outside, brisk walk, breathe, deep breathing, the four blocks method. You'll feel a lot better. Another thing you can do is just be mindful in that present moment. So take your mind away from that stressful trigger and just think of five things that you can see, feel, or hear in that moment. So it could be bird song, it could be a traffic going past. It's all things that will just get you back to the present and specifically away from the stress that you were thinking about. Now, I would just point out that obviously some acute stresses require your complete attention. For example, there's a truck coming down the road. You wouldn't start doing a box technique and you would just move yourself away from that stressful situation. This is where you can safely do so and it's appropriate to do so. So, can you actually reverse chronic stress? So, the great news is you can. So, if you suspect that you might have chronic stress, then these are the things that you can do. So all of these take time. It's not something that you're going to find it just fixed overnight. You need to essentially teach your body that it is safe again, and you need to do it every single day. So it needs to be told every single day that it's now safe again, so that your body is no longer in this permanent state of fight, flight, or fear mode, which is basically what happens. So, first thing you can do is get yourself a support network, people around you can talk to who will comfort you. So, a comforting network is what is so important. If you don't have that around you, then find yourself a really lovely therapist or counselor or even coach that you can chat to about that. Secondly, sleep. Your body needs rest to heal. So we should all be getting between 7 and 9 hours sleep a night. If you've been through chronic stress, then you need to be really trying to aim for 8 or 9 hours to allow your body time to reset. So really focus on sleep, fueling your body with all the building blocks it needs in order to reset your system. So making sure that you're getting enough protein, fiber, vitamins, minerals in your diet. And then movement. So making sure that you are going outside every day, taking walks. It could be yoga, meditation, that kind of thing. See, meditation isn't always movement, but with yoga, you can do meditation. Meditation is something you can do anytime when you're trying to sleep, that kind of thing. Anything that calms you down and brings you joy. So just allow yourself time. As I say, it doesn't happen overnight. It can take months to reverse long-term chronic stress. So, and in some cases, 6 months to a year. So, allow yourself time, and certainly talk to your coach, and they can help you as well. So, what's burnout? Before I talk about this, so what can you reverse it? So burnout is essentially when your whole stress system it breaks, it runs out, it runs down, and no longer functions at all. So your adrenaline and your cortisol may not be being produced properly at all. So burnout is really when you can't take any more. And sometimes people wait till they get to this point before actually doing anything about it. And that is not the time to be doing it. That is when you realize stress is becoming having a negative impact. That's when you do it, not when you're on full burnout. But plenty of people do suffer from full burnout, and that's the point where you must seek professional help. You need to make sure that you are properly supported and you get to that point, and you need to be prepared to say no to everything that is causing you stress and take yourself away from that. That could mean signing yourself off work or having the doctor sign yourself off work, and 100% putting your health as top priority. And then you work on the things that we talked about in the previous slide, and you do so very gently, one step at a time. And that's where the professional help will help you to do that. So things like looking at your diet, looking at healthy habits, exercise, and doing things that bring you joy every single day. So removing yourself from the stress completely, and then having a plan for recovery. So it's not fun if you get to that burnout point. Obviously, we don't want anyone to get to that, but if you do, it is completely reversible. You just need to make sure you get help and be kind to yourself and be prepared for it to take some time. So we get asked this question a lot, can medication help stress? So um, yes, there is a time and a place for medication, where people have perhaps chronic stress, anxiety, depression, things like that. Depending on your circumstances, it can help some people. But the difficulty is that medication alone doesn't actually prevent the stress. It doesn't take you away from the stress. It doesn't teach you to learn to cope with the stress or change your circumstances. So it can mask the symptoms of stress, but can't actually deal with the root cause. So I would say be mindful of that. One thing that you can do is to look at natural supplements. So one of the ones that we do at Health Mastery is called 5-HTP. Now, 5-HTP is actually a naturally occurring amino acid in your body, and that amino acid helps to help serotonin production. Now, serotonin is the opposite end of cortisol. It's actually the happy hormone. So this makes you feel calm and contented. So if you supplement with 5-HTP, then in conjunction with these other things that I've talked about, how to regulate, mitigate stress, it can actually help you to feel more balanced and calm. So making sure that you have all your vitamins and minerals, of course, and good nutrition, but also making sure that if you feel it necessary, you can top up on your 5-HTP to just help you get out of that lull that you might be in. So yeah, if you haven't seen it already, do speak to your coach about it if you're interested. So have a think now whether or not you have experienced stress in the last month and what that might be. Is that something that was an acute stress and it's gone now? Or are you finding that you actually have ongoing stress in your life? What might that be? And if that's the case, what's the one thing that you're going to try this week? So it could be that you're going to be practicing more mindfulness in that moment and perhaps the box breathing techniques, or you're going to be looking at how you can become more aware of when you're feeling stressed, or it could be that you're going to take yourself away from that stress and do more walking. Perhaps it's more meditation. Perhaps you're going to stretch more regularly, shake more regularly. What is it one thing that you're going to try out this week? So let us know in the app or have a chat next time you speak to your coach. So if you have any questions, as always, let us know in the app. We would love to hear from you. So that's it for today. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us, and we will see you all again next time.